Last I wrote, I was trying to carefully disassemble the cabin top, but came to realize I was in for a tougher fight than I expected. Every part of it had been fused together with some sort of industrial strength adhesive, so I had to get more aggressive with the demolition. I knew I couldn't save the plywood, so I broke out the circular saw and cut the ply into long strips to make it easier to pry up. I had only removed the screws from one sheet of ply, so I only cut that section.
Huh.
Once that was done, I tried separating the plywood from the tongue and groove underneath with a paint scraper and a long flat pry bar. It was going really well at first, and then I jinxed it by saying, "Oh wow, this is so easy."
Oh wow, it's so easy.
The glue must have heard me because it grabbed the plywood tight and wouldn't let go. I originally thought that the glue must be epoxy, but I'm not sure when the cabin top was laid as it's not original. I was able to get the bulk of the plywood up, but it left most of the bottom veneer behind, so I had to figure out a way to remove that. The belt sander wasn't up to the task, so I converted my grinder into a sander with a dust shroud and a sanding pad. There were some areas that the grinder needed some help with, so I used my jack plane to scrub down those high spots. After drenching myself in bug repellent to stave off the black fly hordes, I put some music on and got to chiseling out the epoxy, or whatever it is, from the remaining screw heads with a mallet and a pick. It was slightly maddening, but also a bit meditative once I got into the groove. I kept breaking the tip off of the pick though, so I had to regularly resharpen it on my grinder. With all the screw heads cleared, I got out my grandfather's brace and started to back them all out. I decided to take the screws out in 2 steps since the brace gives me much more control over the amount of torque than a power drill does, but the drill is much faster and can finish them off quickly. It took a while, but I finally had all the screws out. All 374 of them, I counted. I've been having trouble with the new tarp that I bought to cover the boat. I thought the nylon scrim reinforcement would make it stronger than the last one, but it rips a lot easier in the wind. I've tied sheet bends at the corners, which should be a lot stronger than the riveted/sewn-in strapping that I was using before. I also ordered and installed some of those tarp clips that I mentioned in one of my last letters, and I'm looking into stronger tarps or other materials that might work better. Once the tarp was secured, I got back to ripping the plywood into strips. I was trying to save the tongue and groove, but when I tried to pry it up, I realized it couldn't be saved. There's a fine line between trying to build things to last and building something that is effectively irreparable. This cabin top had to come apart to properly fix the deck house, and in order to do that, I had to destroy 4 sheets of mahogany plywood and over 250 linear feet of clear tongue and groove pine. I know that the sea demands a lot of ships, so I understand the desire to overbuild for the most strength possible. I am glad that I did the demolition though, because it turns out the tongue and groove had been fastened, and glued of course, to the teak beams using steel nails which were rusting from leaks and the salty air at sea. I tried a few methods to speed up the removal of the sheathing now that I knew I wasn't going to salvage it, some more effective than others. I finally settled on cutting the sheathing between the beams, trying first with a jigsaw, and then with a circular saw, which was way quicker. Once I had made the cuts, it was relatively easy to twist the smaller chunks of sheathing off the beams. rest came off easily, and then I finally had the teak beams exposed. Unfortunately, I cracked a couple in the process, but I may be able to repair them. It also looks like there used to be some sort of hatch in the center of the cabin top at one point. I wonder if it was a skylight. After that, I decided I would try to tackle the stubborn portholes by making a porthole wrench out of an old metal T-post and some bolts that would fit into the holes in the porthole bezel rings. I originally tried to use brass bolts thinking that they wouldn't mar the bronze, but they were too soft and immediately folded over.
Come on. Yes.
Next, I tried steel bolts and cut them shorter so that there was less leverage.
What? Oh, it's a different size. No. No. Why are they all different?
I had to make a bunch of adjustments since all of the portholes have slightly different screw hole spacing. But once I had it right, it worked great, and the rings unscrewed with a little effort.
Nice. Whoa.
I was able to get all but 2 of them removed. The holdouts put up a big fight. One of them is so stuck that I ended up bending the metal bar and also did a face plant trying to unscrew it. I'll keep soaking them in penetrating fluid and see if I can get them loosened later. I tapped the rest of the portholes out of the deck house with a wooden mallet, loosely screwed their rings back on so I wouldn't lose track of them, and set them aside.
Ow.
I'm happy with the progress I made this week. It feels like I'm finally starting to get into a rhythm, and it feels like my health is improving, allowing me to move faster. Now that the cabin top is opened up, I can start hauling out the interior furnishings and get full access to the hull. Once that's done and I have everything assessed, I can start working on replacing frames and get her back in shape. Until next time, writing you from an open concept boat in the woods, Joshua.